The movie begins in a dystopian future where a mysterious virus has killed off everyone who has gone through puberty. Only kids who haven't hit that stage are left to wander the world on their own. With society in ruins, the children band together in groups, hunting and struggling to survive in this harsh new reality. Moving on with the story, a young girl named Ines and her friend Bowie stumble upon a kid walking alone in the forest. The two of them quietly sneak up on the kid as he plays with toy cars. Ines then demands his backpack, but he refuses and whips out a sharp screwdriver as a threat. Infuriated, Ines violently slashes him with her machete, killing him in an instant. She then passes the backpack to Bowie, who searches it in hopes of finding any food or water. Unfortunately, he finds nothing inside, leaving the two with little hope for survival. Suddenly, they hear some music playing softly. They then leave the poor boy's lifeless body behind to find the source of the sound. Through her binoculars, Ines spots an abandoned town nearby, but Bowie notes that it's not marked on their map. As they take a look around, they discover not only a water source, but an entire ocean. Shortly after, Ines comes up with a plan to enter the empty town. She returns to the kid they had mercilessly killed earlier and tears off a piece of his blood-stained clothing. Ines then orders Bowie to stay behind and scout the area. It turns out that this area belongs to a group of kids known as the Blue Meanies. Bowie recalls a chilling incident of how the other children discovered a man wrapped in blue plastic with his throat slit open. However, Ines brushes it off as a story made up to frighten the children. Although Bowie is reluctant to stay back alone, he is left with no other choice. Meanwhile, Ines makes a walking cane from a tree branch and wraps the blood-stained cloth around her knee. She then pretends to be injured and starts limping as she makes her way toward the town. Later, when Ines arrives at the abandoned town, she screams out for help, still limping to fake her injury. Just then, a girl named Quan stops her while pointing a gun at her. Ines then pleads for some water while still remaining cautious. Eventually, Quan agrees to help her, and Ines shares her plan to head north after hearing rumors of a kid developing a vaccine in that area. Although Quan initially remains suspicious, she gradually becomes more comfortable. In her excitement, she rambles on about her project, giving Ines the chance to grab her gun. She then points the gun at Quan and demands all of her supplies. When Quan refuses to give in to the threat, Ines pulls the trigger, only to realize that the gun she stole is just a toy. As the tables turn, Ines admits her defeat and pulls back cautiously. However, she accidentally steps on a stray nail on the ground and injures herself. Shortly afterward, Ines passes out due to the pain and wakes up to find Quan gently cleaning up her wound. Taking a look around the area, Ines realizes they're in an old amusement park. Quan goes on to reveal that she helped Ines because she needs a team for a project she's been working on. She then mentions an ancient book named Al-Shifa, meaning the healing. Quan explains that if someone reads this book to a sick person, they'll be instantly cured. Upon hearing this, Ines excitedly believes Quan is the kid with the vaccine and cure. However, Quan reveals the bitter truth that there's no cure for the virus at all. Following this, she explains that her project is to actually restore the amusement park. She says that she wants the remaining children to believe in magic and to have fun despite their circumstances. Upon hearing this, Ines becomes furious and urges her to face reality for what it is. Suddenly, she spots Bowie approaching from behind and tries to stop him from attacking Quan. Unfortunately, he ends up striking her, but Quan bravely fights back before fleeing from the scene. Shortly after, Bowie gives Ines her machete, and together they set out to find Quan. As they search through the park, the bright flickering lights make it difficult for them to see. Seizing the opportunity, Quan attacks Bowie and vanishes into the darkness. Ines continues searching for Quan and stumbles upon Bowie's mask along the way. However, she ends up being violently attacked before she realizes that it's a trap set by Quan. Later, she wakes up to find Bowie duct-taped onto a motor, forced to pedal for water supply to one of the slides. Quan then convinces Ines to join her on a water slide, and they get down together before diving into the lake. Through this delightful experience, Quan proves the value of her project. Meanwhile, the blue meanies wander through the woods and stumble upon an abandoned toy car in a puddle. In a flashback, Ines is shown being forced into taking someone's life to be accepted into a group. As she stares at her bloodied hands in horror, the group leader tells her to toughen up and coldly welcomes her to the group. At present, Ines and Quan become good friends, which leaves Bowie feeling frustrated and jealous. Later, Quan opens a cabinet filled with different kinds of weapons. This leaves Ines surprised since she had been using a toy rifle for defense when they first met. Quan then decides to give Ines another chance and removes her anklets after making her promise to help build Al-Shifa. They talk about the blue meanies, and Ines suggests they were created by kids to intimidate and control others. She also admits being a part of a group, but now she and Bowie are the only survivors. Quan then admits that the only person she can truly rely on is her brother Luca. She reveals how he spends his time playing with toy cars in the forest rather than helping her in the park. Ines suddenly realizes that the young kid she had brutally killed in the woods is none other than Quan's brother. However, when Quan asks if she saw Luca in the forest, Ines denies ever seeing him. Following this, Ines contemplates her next steps, aware that Quan will eventually discover the truth. She secretly takes Quan's keys to free Bowie from his chains, but realizes she's taken the wrong ones. Ines then urges him to apologize to Quan, but he refuses to lie. After Ines storms off in frustration, Bowie remembers the day he met her. In a flashback, it's revealed that she had come to his rescue when a group of guys bullied him at school. Later that evening, Ines reveals that she spent a long time in the hospital, even before the virus outbreak. During her stay, she used to read books, and her favorite stories were those where everyone died at the end. As time passed, she started studying survival tactics, preparing herself for any potential disasters. Just months later, the apocalypse struck and she found herself among the last survivors on the planet, surprisingly well prepared for the chaos. Afterward, the girls work together to restore power to the amusement park. Later that night, Quan sends a signal to her brother to help him find the park. Finding Ines alone, Bowie mentions that he knows that she was responsible for Luca's death. Meanwhile, Quan lights the fireworks, which unintentionally attracts the attention of a group of young people wandering in the forest. Feeling guilty, Ines decides to take responsibility, while Quan accepts the loss of her brother. She throws a toy car into the lake, considering it the first step toward moving on from Luca. She also decides to continue building the park to leave behind something meaningful after she's gone. While Ines sits with Quan to comfort her, Bowie manages to free himself from the boat. He then confronts Ines and gives her a final chance to leave with him or stay with Quan. Suddenly, he attacks Quan with a screwdriver, which she immediately recognizes as belonging to Luca. It is at this moment that Quan discovers that her new friend is actually the one responsible for her brother's death. Infuriated by the betrayal, Quan warns Ines and Bowie to leave before she returns with her rifle. Suddenly, she starts coughing up blood, a sign of the widespread disease. Ines rushes to help her friend, but Bowie spots a group of hooded teenagers approaching them. Realizing they're being chased by the blue meanies, Ines and Bowie flee in fear, leaving Quan alone. One of the meanies tracks them down, leading Bowie to attack him in a fight while Ines rushes to find a gun. Just as she finds the gun, a meanie snatches it away from her, trying to show her something. However, Bowie attacks her just in time and escapes into the woods with Ines. The next morning, he discovers Quan's diary in her backpack, but throws it away after failing to open the lock. When Ines finds the diary, she picks it up and recalls all the times she saw Quan writing in it. Later on, while walking through the forest, they come across a body of a young man. His throat has been slit open, and the body is wrapped in a blue blanket, indicating the work of the blue meanies. Following this, Ines finds herself unable to get Quan out of her mind and regrets not having the chance to say her goodbyes. The next morning, Bowie carries Ines on his back due to her injuries as they set out on their journey out of the woods. Along their way, Quan's diary falls to the ground and Bowie tosses it into the sea in anger. Ines unexpectedly jumps into the water to get it back, leaving Bowie stunned. While trying to follow his friend, he ends up drowning in the sea. In a panic, Ines rushes back to save him and drags him to the shore. She desperately tries to revive Bowie, but he still remains motionless. Then, after countless tries, he is finally revived. Next, they make weapons out of whatever materials they can find to arm themselves. They also decide to confront anyone who crosses their path and tries to harm them. The following morning, Bowie acts as bait and uses his melodious voice to lure the blue meanies towards their trap. As anticipated, a couple of meanies are drawn by his singing and follow the sound while Bowie hides in the bushes nearby. Just when one of the meanies approaches, Ines cuts the rope and releases a ball of thorns onto him, but he easily dodges the attack. Bowie goes on to attack the boy, but the latter gains the upper hand and overpowers him. In the meantime, Ines swiftly disarms another meanie approaching with a rifle and uses her to help free Bowie. The meanies rush to reunite and embrace each other, leading Ines to spare their lives. As she and Bowie are about to leave, one of the meanies stops them and asks for a pen to convey something. She then writes a message on her forearm, revealing that they know a way to help cure themselves of the disease. Just then, Ines begins coughing up blood from her mouth, causing panic among the others. In her unconscious state, Ines reunites with Quan and apologizes for her mistakes and the harm she's caused. Surprisingly, Quan encourages her to use her life to make a positive impact on others. As they embrace, Ines finally gets the chance to say her goodbyes. Moments later, she wakes up in a hospital room with her neck bandaged. A young doctor walks into the room and writes on a small board to reveal that she has been cured of the disease. Unfortunately, her larynx had to be removed as part of the process, leaving her unable to speak. Later on, Ines finds herself in a refuge with other young survivors of the virus. Together, they search for children around the area to help them find a cure. A few days later, Ines reunites with Bowie and discovers that he has been cured of the disease as well. Following this, a young girl strolls through an empty field and hears someone playing guitar. She finds Ines and Bowie sitting in the shade of a tree nearby and catches them by surprise. The girl then threatens them with her gun and demands all of their supplies. However, she falls right into their trap and they quickly capture her when she tries to grab their backpack. Ines then offers her food and invites her to join the blue meanies. The movie comes to an end as the young girl is brought to the shelter, where she meets the rest of the group around the campfire.